Hello, my wonderful and beautiful humans. What a time we had. Welcome to the after show of the debate on modern day debate of what is the definition of it was is the Book of Mormon scientific? What a wild one. What a wild one. This was one I haven't had for a while. I might throw this around a bit because this was cray. How y'all doing? I'm doing okay. I'm a little jarred and confused and scared and maybe, a little gassy, but, I'm okay. But I'd like somebody is here already, and it is an open stream. Everybody is welcome. Respect and love for everybody. But it is an open stream, so you're more than welcome to join. But we do have a contender, my friend and champion of the poor, Elusive Viper. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. How's it going?
I might need some time to reorganize my thoughts after that because I don't know if I was being gaslit or whether I was, I honestly, that was crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. It seemed like he was just trying to get some sort of weird rhetorical win there. I haven't seen as much of Kyle's stuff as would probably be needed to say anything definitive, but
No,
I certainly don't have any proof.
I've seen a couple of his flat Earth debates, like a couple of them, and usual flat Earth stuff. But I haven't seen him on any other subject. But he seemed to sort of have this idea that if you don't have proof, then you don't have an argument or a position, or you're not entitled to argue for anything, which was a real weird stance to take, like such a weird stance to take on because whenever he couldn't answer a question, it was always like, well, you don't have proof. And
Yeah,
it's like,
he had, I think, two or three different sound bites, and he just decided to dip and
yeah.
flex and try and acrobatic his way into that answering any given question ever.
I think my favorite part was where he said that Lord of the Rings was a science book. I think that was my favorite part. Like, honestly, that is it's so absurd that Lord of the Rings is a science book. Like, what isn't a science book? Maybe that was a question I should have asked.
He thought it
Like,
was a
what
joke.
book?
I was generally trying to help him out there at the end. Maybe the elves were his lost lineage.
Maybe. Look, I still think it's Durin's folk because they went extinct, kind of
That's
thing.
fair.
A dragon was involved somewhere. Look, I mean, we're joking, but seriously, I wish I'd asked that. What book isn't a science book? Because all books are systematically ordered, right, into chapters and stuff. So there is no book which is not a science book, which is absurd. Then why are we calling it a science book?
Yeah, his goal was just to try and, because he even said it out very clearly, like he wanted to have a mile-wide goalpost to the point where it was impossible for him to be wrong. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. It's like all the other thing I guess you could have done is just say, all right, I guess that's fair, but also this means nothing now, and all books are scientific books. The Quran is scientific. My refrigerator manual is scientific.
It's more
Everything.
scientific than the Book of Mormon, in my
That's
opinion,
probably
to be honest
fair.
with you.
But everything is science at that point. Therefore, the meaning has almost no utility.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I don't know. I just didn't want to give him the satisfaction of saying, well, I won, because my definition was so broad, it would encompass literally anything, including up to and including the Teletubbies. That was in his opening. The Teletubbies are scientific.
To be fair, the Teletubbies are probably more scientific than the Book of Mormon. That's a kids show. I'm sure they're doing some sort of introductory scientific theory on there.
Ian Chen, thank you so much. For Australian $7.99 dollary dues, my fellow Australian and all-around champion, Ian Chen, wanting this may trigger mark your buffering for me. Could you please increase your latency? I hate you so much, Ian. I hate you so much. Look, so latency is how long it takes for something to respond. It's lag. So it's how long the signal takes to get out to a server, back from the server. Like if you're buffering, it's probably the bandwidth, which means that you can't transfer.
Wait, but if you increased your latency, wouldn't that give it more time to buffer?
No. No, it's look, there's a few things that I wish I'd asked, and to be honest with you, towards the start I wasn't paying attention to the chat. When it turned into a fast halfway through, when it turned to a fast like 10 minutes in, I was like, all right, I might as well look at the chat now because this is just ridiculous. A lot of people had a lot of good things in the chat, I must admit. Like, people were asking the right questions, but every time I sort of got onto something, it was just, well, you don't have proof because you can't prove that because you don't have proof in science, and sort of I feel that I explained that sufficiently. I probably shouldn't have gone down the solipsism rabbit hole with him, because that's where I was trying to drag him when I was annoyed. I was annoyed at sort of, well, you don't have proof, so you don't know anything. You can't claim anything.
I think you can kind of go down that route. I think because it's really relevant to the idea of why science doesn't prove things, because it's maybe not to that degree necessarily, but science doesn't prove things because we don't know for sure, because we don't really have a mechanism to get around
Right, we're honest. We
Whose
say,
trilemma
hey,
is in
yeah.
there?
The Agrippa trilemma or the
Yeah,
Munchausen trilemma. Yeah. And welcome to the stream, Pat. Pat, thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to see you. I'm glad you're not in here disparaging my stream and me personally today. I appreciate that. But do feel free if you feel the desire. Just a lowly archaeologist. Just a lowly, yeah. No, what do you know about science? You're just an archaeologist.
That's what I tell my students. If you want to be a scientist and you like dirt, then go be a geologist, because
right,
we drink more beer than we do science.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the definition of science was blown so far out of all proportion. I don't know anybody that has that definition. It came at me left field. I didn't know that his definition of science was anything that is a system.
Well, so I tried to, as you know, again, I'm not a fan of modern day debate for reasons not involving you, but like
no, that's fair. That's
some of the things they've done in the past, right? So, but you know, you advertise this. I'm like, I want to see this debate, so I jumped in. I was immediately perplexed when I started trying to find his definitions in real time, and then I realized exactly what he was doing. It's like, does he actually know how to use a dictionary and understand, you know, what prevalence, like the order that definitions occur in, are directly related to the significance and commonality of their usage, right? So,
and the context, right, it has sentences to show the context.
Correct. And the fact that he like jumped to number 4, right? And the least common usage, which is the non-scientific usage. When something says colloquial, it means people who aren't using it in a technical way. So it's like, oh, let's use the non-technical definition of a technical word and then complain when, and it's the least common of the common usages of the term too. I just, again, you know, again, like the Olmecs, the fact he thought that was actually evidence, I started pounding on my keyboard. The Olmecs weren't wiped out. Like the Olmec civilization collapsed. That's different than them being exterminated. Their system, they had what's known as system failure. They had a drought, long-term drought. Their civilization couldn't produce enough food for that, you know, population center to stay in one place. So people left the cities and towns and went back into the countryside and started a more hunter-gatherer, more small community living style. And the population decreased severely because of lack of food. People tend not to do well. But the Olmecs didn't just all go away. The Olmecs were later assumed by other people, right? There's not like all the Olmecs aren't found in the city dead. You know, there's graveyards and there's, you know, the burials, but ultimately the population declined. It was a fairly steady decline, and there's numerous hypotheses on why it collapsed the way it did. And, you know, with many things, it's probably more than one cause, which is something that he just, you know, but he thought, well, there was this ancient civilization from about 1200 to 400 BCE that's in South America that collapsed for some unknown reason. So that must be Book of Mormon, which it drives me fucking nuts. Because it's like, they weren't all wiped out.
That's a total non sequitur, isn't it? It just does not follow from what he's saying.
Well, I don't think he was looking for something that followed. He was looking for something that was at the very basic level consistent.
Right. He was grasping at straws to build a submarine. Yeah. That's exactly what he was doing. Like, again, like the idea that, like, you know, Leonardo da Vinci designed flying machines, but it took hundreds of years later for people to actually develop the mechanisms to make them work, is the same thing with the development of the submarine. There were already stories being written about fabulous submarines, like, because they were, in addition to being an
40,000 leagues under the sea.
Correct. There were all this stuff already out there. And he's like, well, Joseph Smith had no reference material. And I'm like, are you fucking serious, bro? Like,
I wish I'd thought of that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious as to how he'd answer. How do you determine what a word means in a given context? Because it seems like if to misuse the word science so egregiously, like I don't know how you could understand the concept of context.
Well, I think that's his only out. Like, I mean, like I said before I did this debate, I don't know how anyone could argue that the Book of Mormon is scientific. and sort of I was sort of perplexed about what he would do in this situation, but it seems like just an equivocation, kind of my definition, because I challenged you to the debate. My definition wins. I don't. That isn't how that works. Like I don't understand why that would work.
It didn't. It was pretty obvious. I mean, I will start off with, I had no beers on board. By about 15 minutes in, I was already done with my first beer. And by my third beer, which I'm starting now, it's much funnier now. Like when I'm reviewing it in real time in my brain, I'm like, yeah, this was hilarious. Like I again, it was a waste of his time. You know, it's like, and he doesn't realize it. That's the sad thing. He doesn't realize it was a waste of his time and an actual embarrassment. Like
it's a waste of my time too, but I didn't know that going in. Like,
I did look back at his original post. It was not, could the Book of Mormon be considered a scientific book? Is the Book of Mormon is a scientific book, and he even specifically called out previous debates on the channel about the Quran being a scientific book, which does not use any sort of novel definition or colloquial definition of science. It uses the definition you were using.
Yeah, what a concept. Like, again, this is the guy who talked about, you know, God manifests himself, and that's why I joined the army. I joined the army, but then I was told to have, you know, not go to combat. And I'm like, well, you know that when you said I have to take a break as a National Guardsman and go on a missionary trip with my church that's extended, you understand that's a common exemption in the military. It was like, oh hell, trust me, dude, they had a form for it for a reason. They just checked a box. Yeah, the one exemption National Guardsmen can get, breaks in service, is religious exemption. like fuck, dude, like no miracle. It's already in the Universal Code of Military Justice, you know, exemptions for service for temporary periods, right? Like, this is, again, no different than some cases like family medical leave when you have a dying relative. There's a form for it already in the military. And you're a National Guardsman, so you're not a full-time service member, and there's actually more exemptions for you than other people.
Did they let you sign that off or submit that form after you get the impression that you're about to be shipped out, or is that something that would have just been a happy coincidence?
I don't know what his motivation was. I just know
I'm just asking, is it possible? Can you be like, hey, you guys are about to get shipped out? Oh man, this form here says I might not be.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not, you know, knowing, you know, what the exemptions are in the military. I've done them with peripherally in my other career. Guys, you know, needing to get those occasionally, or like guys that couldn't go on a deployment because they were stuck in other important government assignments. But I am aware that the one person in my old job that was a lay pastor used it for a short period of time, not end up deploying, but then he deployed later. So, you know, I don't know if he was doing it to avoid service. I don't want to disparage his character, but I know he had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. But, you know, it's kind of this feeling to, you know, do missionary work instead of being deployed might not have been God. And it was really weird because, like, there were certain things he just, like, basic things he just didn't understand. Like, you talk about empirical evidence and he's talking about dreams, and it's like, how, like, I don't understand. I just don't understand, like, how you can get dreams from empirical evidence. It's so weird.
He didn't go down the route of well, your mind is physical and you think about God, so therefore you have a concept of God in your mind, so therefore God is physical.
Yeah, it's you know, again, it's one of those things where I don't get it. I mean, I talk to religious people all the time. It's kind of part of my research now. And I have to put on a very different hat. It looks a lot like the one I'm wearing in this picture right here. I'm an archaeologist hat. And you know, it's my Pat's not gonna be the atheist, right? Pat's just an observer. and an evidence gatherer, right? Information gatherer. So,
oh, look, Pat, like seriously, there's three things you never talk about in your job, like especially when you're in corporate, like I was. Do you know what those three things are?
probably religion, politics, and abortion.
Well, religion, politics, and sex, basically. Those
Okay.
are the three things you just avoid. Like when you're at work, like after work, it's fine. That's kind of, if you're having drinks or something. But during work, you just don't bring those subjects up. It's always problems. Always. Like there's never going to be a time where one won't cause a problem somewhere.
Well, I do like interviewing people, when they're at a religious pilgrimage site, and I'm getting information from them why they came here. I mean, it's amazing what people say. And when I'm done, I sometimes need to go have a beer and have a major check back to reality. So,
yeah.
I've been told I was at a site in Wales 2 years ago where a woman was telling me that she could breathe the air and get more power to clear out like lung infection.
Oh, there's the breatharians. Ooh, people that think they can survive on just air.
Well, no, she believed that in ancient sacred sites near ancient circles, because there's some circles in Wales, stone circles. And so if you stand in the center, that's the purest air because it's cleaned by ley lines, magical vortices. Right. And then if you breathe that in, it helps clear lung infections. Yeah. She gets she's I can never mention her by name. She's subject number whatever, but yeah, she's going to be quoted in my dissertation. Very nice lady though, but it was just
sure.
And she was convinced. I mean, she had a demonstrable expectation of effectiveness, right? That's kind of one of the things I do take a little bit of time to talk about is religiosity. Like once you reach a certain level of religiosity, it's hard to accept counter information.
So
counter evidence is really problematic.
It may actually work because the placebo effect is so powerful. Like I was watching this thing on I can't remember if it was Veritasum or one of those science channels, and they were doing like putting kids through an MRI machine and telling them it would clear. And the MRI machine wasn't doing anything; it just made sounds and had lights. And like the amount of changes that they could make to their health using just a fake machine was insane. Like it just is incredible. But the thing is that if you understand that, you can implement it yourself. So
right. That's one thing I was working a while ago on, and I've put the study down a little bit because Biddy's kind of lost interest in it. But ritual agnosticism, like the effective construct of ritual in people's life to gain some semblance of control, right? So there's been studies like how effective can someone with a non-belief engage in ritual actually be, and it's less effective than those that have a sincerely held belief or expectation, like those children being stuck in the machine. Part of the placebo effect for them is an expectation of effective treatment, right, or efficacy. So a lot of the improvement though, when we monitor their psychological effect, their psychological indice of improvement, how they think they feel or how they perceive they feel, are higher. When we actually get into biological metrics, though, there is sometimes slight improvement, but that slight improvement is often of limited time and not curative. So again, is this just,
absolutely. Yeah.
The endocrinologists are telling us this is just what happens when you push a lot of positive, of endorphins and adrenaline into people's body with these positive emotional experiences. Again, is a placebo effect real? Absolutely. It's a placebo effect. I mean, is it going to cure you? Probably not.
Well, it's actually kind of interesting because Mark, you'd mentioned earlier in the debate about the effects of prayer not working if you mentioned a study where prayer didn't work and it was actually it actually produced worse results if the people knew about the prayer. So it's interesting how that placebo effect kind of worked backwards there.
They think what happened this was a really famous study by the Templeton Foundation, and they are a religious organization. So kudos for them for publishing, the results that they got. They were very, very honest about what they got. But what we think it is, or what the people who did the study think it is, that if you're sick and somebody's praying for you, you might be stressed thinking, I've got to get better because they're praying for me. There becomes a expectation of you getting better, and that can add to stress, which of course can make you worse. I also wanted to mention, I'll just get Beamsy in quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, there you go, Beamsy. I'll just say quickly that before I go to Beamsy, that the real unknown thing about, like, yes, prayer and these and sort of religiosity can be good for your well-being because of all the reasons sort of Pat said, but also that the unknown about it is the bad things about religion. Like the biggest predictor, the single biggest predictor for mental health problems in young people is whether or not they believe in demons. That is the single biggest predictor. So yes, that whole thing of, having confidence in, your God to heal you and things can actually, give you a sense of well-being. But there's also the flip side that hell can do damage and demons can do damage and belief in bad things can do damage as well. And I think that's sort of overlooked a lot. And I just wanted to sort of point that out. But Beamsy, how are you doing? Welcome. I hope you're feeling well. I hope you're getting better.
I feel like I've been run over by a bus, but that's besides the point. But
No.
Pat, you've got to realize if you want to dig up dirt on people, that's where you guys come in. It's where you want to get your rocks off. That's where you come to geology.
Absolutely.
Yes, I don't. Have you met Pat before, Beamsy? You probably have. I mean, you've both been over at Amy's.
Oh yeah, he makes fun of me not knowing just enough geology to get in trouble. Because I figure anything deeper than 10 feet, I really don't give a shit about. And Beamsy starts to care at about 10 feet. So everything newer than 10 feet up, Beamsy's like, oh, that's new shit. And I go, everything older than 10 feet, that's fucking ancient shit. Like way ancient. Like geological record ancient. I don't give a shit.
Pat finds his interest in the new stuff. I find my interest in the old stuff. That's just a better way of putting it.
Yeah. No, and it's good, and you sort of feel slightly overlap. I get that, just ever so slightly. Same with paleontology.
I was just going to say something real quick, Mark. One thing about my studies that I've been reading a lot of journal articles for the last couple of years on this. There's several studies, not definitive, but there's definitely strong evidence to suggest, and I know that the ladies out there are going to beat my ass, but it appears that women are more prone to the placebo effect than men, by the way. There's a slight higher correlation of positive effects from things like prayer with women than men. So and I don't think it really has to do with skepticism. I think it has to do with more with positive expectation. So again, it just slightly higher, but it's been repeated in several studies. So particularly, of certain demographics too, women of a slightly advanced age. I think one study was like 40 plus women start to have a higher, positive feedback or positive reporting higher than men on, the placebo effect.
Yeah. So I think,
and Tim, you said it. I did not say that. I will not endorse that comment.
Oh, look, there's been stuff that supports sort of positive reinforcement, like sort of your self-talk and how you talk to yourself, how that can affect your not just your mental well-being, but your physical well-being as well. Like that, it isn't necessarily bad to be able to use positive reinforcement to achieve things and get what you want. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It doesn't mean you're gullible. No. It means that you're reinforcing a paradigm in your head that leads you to be able. That was what was it? It was the Secret was based upon, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
So, yeah, all it was positive reinforcement. Like it was like, oh, the universe will give you what you want if you really want it. All you have to do is keep telling yourself you're going to get it, and then it'll come true. And yeah, it's just positive reinforcement. If you keep saying, hey, I'm going to go out and make all this money and get this car, you're more likely to actually achieve that. it doesn't mean the universe is working for you. It just means that you're telling yourself to do it over and over.
Well, and yeah.
Oh, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it, man, because I don't think it has to do with gullibility at all.
No, and it's also talking about like social systems too. How do many religions are still heavily patriarchal, and there's been studies, sociologists have looked at basically
Mormons for one,
right? And some of these studies are based on feminist theory, but like when you go and you examine a religious system, or religious communities, and how the women in that group view their roles, and then in what are less patriarchal religious systems or non-patriarchal religious system is it's interesting. How men and women in a highly patriarchal religious system tend to view even the religion, the fundamental aspects of the religion very differently, as far as how they approach both the community and personal interaction. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know. I think also maybe it's because guys in general are more, like, just as a general statement, we are more pessimistic and more realistic with sort of things. The suicide rate for men is way higher than women, for instance. Sort of some more pessimistic kind of outlook on life on a general level. So
attempted suicides are actually higher in women, but successful suicides are higher in men.
Really? I did not know that. That's interesting.
Women attempt suicide more often, but men succeed at suicide more often.
Yeah.
And it's a massively varied number.
Right.
I could go looking again. No, sorry.
Well, I didn't really want to talk about that. I don't know why I brought it up. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just not with it. Really... My brain isn't.
You're fine, Beamsy. You're fine, mate. Like, sending you the best. But Beamsy's had a bit of a spill and is in. Are you still in hospital, or are you out
got discharged this morning? So I just missed your debate. And
that's okay, mate. I'll put it up as soon. Actually, I'll start the download right now.
What I was actually trying to come to before my brain got fuzzied is. They think that it's because women are crying for help, whereas in men just deal with it themselves. That's where they think that number comes from.
Well, there's a lot of stigma associated with men asking for help, and I think it's completely unwarranted. I think that we should be more understanding when it comes to mental health issues. But I mean, that's totally. How did we get here from Mormonism? Like, seriously?
I don't know, but you're the one that brought it up. But that's where they.
It's probably halfway through that debate. I wanted to neck myself. That's probably why. Like, seriously, holy fuck.
That's why you need in the background the Mormon song from South Park. Dum 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 dum.
Even beyond that, though, like there's kind of a general stigma just in showing any emotion ever, which can kind of lead to cause the problem in the first place. By kind of trying to get you to participate in a debate about whether or not Book of Mormon is scientific.
Do you think I was set up a little? Do you think I was like set up? I mean,
yeah.
Did you hear? To say he didn't go in good faith, I think that's an understatement. You know what I mean? Like,
well, the Noah's Ark, luckily we know now, was pretty much watertight too. and he wanted to argue the science of Noah's Ark because he says there's a lot of evidence. Now, again, that's exactly where I'm at. Like, can you fucking show me any evidence?
Well, I want to jump on that and get a debate on Noah's Ark, because that's like, holy crap! Like, you've got no evidence for Noah's Ark and a lot of evidence against it.
Well, hang on, because wouldn't it make more sense if Noah's Ark, instead of being some sort of this massive ship, just be some sort of airtight structure that actually never left the surface and was just basically a giant submarine?
Well, I've been running numbers in regards to just the sheer level of disaster that some of their stories would be, and I'll just put it this way: water would be the least of their problems.
So I'm going to tell you, a giant fucking sea turtle with an island on its back is more believable than Noah's Ark. Like I mean, at this point, you know, at least sea turtles like exist, right? I mean, fucking Yahweh, come on. Oh.
The thing that I got into it with T-Rock on a recent debate, and I was like, well, how did the bees survive? Because he said the bees weren't on the ark, or insects weren't on the ark. And I'm like, well, what about the bees? And he was trying to claim that floating plant matter had bees' nests on it and all the flowers they needed to survive.
Absolutely.
And it was like, what? Like, how?
They're just a bunch of really convenient lily pads.
I don't know.
And his scientific evidence for his MS Paint drawing was somehow the potential kinetic. His potential kinetic energy equation was his evidence.
Oh, that was the best. He had hand-drawn paintings from paint, like literally, like drawn by himself in paint, and he was hassling me for showing, you know, a subduction zone diagram from the internet, saying, "Oh, you show your cartoon." It's like, you showed an MS Paint diagram that you made yourself. Wow, that was fun. That was a fun time.
Well, going back to the flood, like, I don't know if they've ever actually read the account though. Like, they always go, "Well, it was only 40 days." I'm like, no, it's 40 days of rain and then 150 days of let's hang out and float around. Like, did you actually read the fucking story?
It was 7 months before the tips of the mountaintops were visible. So all in all, you know, it was roughly just under a year essentially, but between the start of the rain to the sort of, you know, the water's clearing essentially.
Right. And they, but, you know, did you count it?
Alone would you have to have for one species, let alone all species?
Well, they don't say species; they say kinds, which I think they're sort of trying to equate that to family
Either way,
level.
we're getting some sort of a. They're not floating around in a boat; they're floating out in the damn TARDIS.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're looking at, I think, a conservative estimate I saw was about 35,000 animals, like pairs on the ark, kind of thing, which is just insane. Like, that's. But the real thing I have a problem with is 8 people caring for that amount of animals, as well as maintenance on the ship, as well as cooking, cleaning, as well as, you know, time to sleep and everything. There is no possible way, like zero possible way, they could ever take care of that amount. And then if you add torsion on the like, a ship that big would have water leakage. We've got barges that big. They have to have bilge pumps. You would have to constantly pump out or bail out the water because they didn't have pumps. Like, there is literally no way 8 people could keep a ship like that running. No way.
I think
Zoos
the argument I've heard
for
how they took care of the animals was that many of the animals went into some sort of God-induced coma.
Yeah. They ate pot brownies that Noah's daughters had made. It was fun.
It's just some giraffes going, wow. Wow, you ever think about the flood?
You know, and what's funny is they don't think it's foolish. Like, and this is where, like, religion makes your brain like atrophy. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just, if I told you, Mark, you're in Australia, and I go, hey, Mark, I'm gonna get a small motorboat here in the States, you know, one for fishing here locally. I'm in the Puget Sound, and I'm gonna, you know, pack up all my stuff on it, and I'm gonna leave. And then I showed up in Australia like 3 months later and say, yeah, I took my little dinghy boat here with, you know, just the motor that I had on it, the gas I could fit on it, the food I could fit on it, and a one sail. But, you know, it was only a 10-foot boat. You wouldn't even believe that. You'd go, bullshit, Pat, where's your plane ticket? Like, no one would believe me, right? Like, and that's, you know, again, but you'll believe Noah. Okay. Have fun.
Well, somebody did take a like tiki houseboat kind of thing from Los Angeles to Hawaii, I think it was, to prove that the Polynesians could have like made trips across the Pacific kind of thing, which was cool. Don't get me wrong, but you know, it was one dude on a you know, catamaran essentially,
right?
but it was pretty cool. That was all sort of handmade and stuff. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and
Let's see if I can find it.
when we look at like again, when we look at the Polynesian Triangle and migration, right? Like, Hawaii wasn't settled till sometime between 700 and 1000 AD. I mean, generally it's considered between like 850 and 900. So like Hawaii's only been settled for a very short amount of time when, islands like in the Philippines were basically the route that people eventually came in. That was sort of settled in like 3500 BCE. There were a lot of failed attempts at exploration into the Pacific. Like not everybody fucking made it. Like there's a lot of people that were, and again, like I think New Zealand is in the Polynesian Triangle, the last populated island, and it wasn't populated till 1200. Like people have been living on it for, roughly 850 years. So we got to think about it. Like we as a species still until relatively recently, we're still exploring in a very primitive way.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's just, but have you heard of they could have done it because this scientific book I read called Lord of the Rings, it had wizards coming across to the New World from the West. So this insanely scientific book, God, I couldn't believe he said that. His opening had that the Teletubbies were scientific. Teletubbies.
I thought the Teletubbies were real.
You're not the only one, apparently.
No, the Teletubbies, not the Teletubbies.
Oh, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. What are the Teletubbies? What is that?
It's an old prank one from one of the old Australian shows. I'm trying to find it now.
Okay.
It's probably not safe for YouTube, knowing Beamsy.
It is on YouTube though.
Okay.
Okay, so this guy made a Kon-Tiki. The name of the ship was the Kon-Tiki. And Thor somebody. I'm trying to find his last name. Heyerdahl. Thor Heyerdahl. And a crew of 6. 5 of whom are Norwegian, because of course they frigging were. And a Swede, no, it's all the, I don't know if you've met any Norwegians. They are good fun. Boy, they can drink. I tell you what, though, if you ever met Swedish people, some of the Swedish people I met, the most organized people I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, it's crazy. And Australians are not organized at all.
I don't know. I met some angry Swedes in Malmo. They were not happy if you don't follow local driving conventions perfectly. The Swedes are not the nice Scandinavians when they're driving their car.
No, they get very upset by things not being organized. Like
they do.
People were rocking up for a trip up north in Western Australia, and like the Australians were just rocking up like 15 minutes late, whatever. Both Swedish people on this trip were there like 5 minutes early and panicking on the dot, kind of thing. And it's a road trip. Like, who cares? It's just, that's what they're like. I love them. They're awesome, but they got to chill a bit.
Pat, this might be a new topic of investigation for you, that maybe the whole idea behind Vikings was actually just a huge misunderstanding. They were trying to break into places and organize everything.
I'm not going to even go there, but I do like explaining to my Norwegian friends who are very proud of their, Scandinavian migration heritage, that they weren't the first Germanic people to do it, and explain that it was, the Saxons and the Jutes and the Angles, and they get very mad.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the conquest of England or migration.
I saw that history program on history. It was called Vikings. It's very historical. Historical indeed.
It's about as historical as the Book of Mormon. Actually, no. There's some actual people that might have existed in that one.
Right. So Ivar the
wow.
The
How funny is that? That the show The Vikings on the History Channel is
Yes.
actually more historic than the Book of Mormon.
Yes.
You heard it here first, boys and girls.
I think people are probably aware of that, Pat. Like the Book of Mormon is so full of crap. It's incredible. Like this was a rabbit hole. I honestly, like I've got a Book of Mormon and I busted it out, right? Here it is. Book of Mormon. Busted it out. And it is a rabbit hole of bullshit. Like really.
You didn't even get into the ridiculous claims either.
No, I was just focusing on, sort of the unscientific ones. Like there's stuff in here that is insane. Like the aliens and stuff. But I was more focused on that papyrus thing where so basically what happened was that Joseph Smith, because as he was getting older, he was getting more and more sort of crazy, right? Like so he was getting kind of unhinged, if you will. And so he bought these papyrus from, he bought these mummies, essentially. He just bought some mummies from Egypt.
From a traveling show. No, it was part of a traveling show.
Yeah, and he sort of said, I have to have these. So he spent church funds buying mummies of all things. They came with these papyrus scrolls. And so he said they were in Reformed Egyptian, laid them down, translated them into the Book of Abraham and the Book of Jacob, I think it was, like the Bible figures, right? And then, after his death, Egyptologists had a look at some of these papyri and went, yeah, this is a standard Egyptian Book of the Dead funeral passage. Like it doesn't.
And part of that story was because they were archaeological, this is the time period where we're starting to figure out like what's going to be heritage and what's not in the United States. Is initially the I'm going to call them the Joseph Smith papyri were lost. They were misplaced. And actually what had happened is they've been taken to the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian had, cataloged them and just kind of put them away. And the Mormons said, oh, we lost them, without knowing that someone had taken them and given to the Smithsonian. And so they stayed in the Smithsonian for quite a long time until some archivist was looking through them and said, this is like relatively recently after it had already been studied back in the day. Because Mormons were like, well, you can't study the original ones. You can't say what Joe Smith had until some from the Smithsonian goes, actually, we found the actual the papyri that Joseph Smith supposedly translated because we have all the notations and all the transference documents, right? The provenience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, it'd be provenance, but that's not important. And then they go, well, this is what it is. And it was and then modern Egyptologists have looked at it and go, yeah, it's absolutely not what it fucking they say it is. So and what's funny is Mormons still leave it in their book. It's been completely debunked and they leave it in there like it's still sacred scripture. It's fucking crazy.
Well, that's what I was trying to get across with sort of my introduction. I don't know if you caught that, Pat, but I was sort of saying that the hallmark of science books is that we do update them. We say, hey, this piece of information is actually wrong. We've learned something. Let's, in a new edition, we correct it. It does change. That's what a science book does. Yep. But religious books can't change because they're the indelible word of some god or, some authority. So you can't change them. Yeah. And that's sort of evidence to show they're not a science book. Because if something's wrong in a science book, we bring out another edition. We change it. That's what we do. Why would you leave something incorrect in a science book? You wouldn't.
Well, and then he, the fact that he confessed, and I thought it was a confession that he was a flat earther. And he offered it like, I was a, artilleryman in the army. And so for that reason, I know. And I'm like, you can actually look up the artillery manuals, both in the Navy and the Army. And it's like,
I was looking up the Army one when we were in question and answer. I was looking up the Army one and I was sort of debating whether or not to bring up, but I found a section that said you had to account for rotation of the Earth. Yeah.
And it's in chapter 3. I actually found it really quick. But, it said, the first thing it says, it's short distances under a certain range. You don't, it takes so long for you to do it on the fly that you don't do it. But if you're shooting over a certain range, like Navy guns, right? Like if they're shooting at extended ranges, they have to start calculating for it. Particularly if they can't see the target on the horizon, right? They start adjusting for curvature. And it's amazing that like this is your job. And again, maybe because you were an enlisted man and you weren't an officer, maybe you weren't trained to the same standard as other people, but I guarantee you that there are people in the military that know to adjust for this, particularly that are dealing in, weapons that have extremely long ranges and, or, due to their tactical precision. So
I don't want to be mean to Kyle because I have been mean to him in the past. No, I don't want to be mean to Kyle, but I feel like, he was the guy to give the job of loading in the ammo to, like really, he's just loading the artillery.
Well,
but that has been mean.
It sounds like he wasn't there. Did he say he went through 2 different missions?
I don't know what he said. Honestly, I kind of.
He definitely said 1. I don't know if he said 2. That was when he was on that really long spiel. He was like talking about how I monologued and then went on his life's fucking story.
Well, he had 2 or 3 different things that interrupted him from going on deployment, and I was just like, those 2 or 3 other things probably interrupted some sort of training as well. So,
Beamsy, you're kind of awesome right now.
Yeah,
that cartoon. Lynn showed me that cartoon. It's sort of really creepy and not even borderline racist. It's just outright racist, right? Like it's just all the bad people.
You notice he went again to talk shit. He went to Dixie University in Utah. Dixie.
Okay.
They changed their name because Dixie's considered a racially offensive Dixie, as in Dixie in the South, associated with the Confederacy, right? I wish I was in Dixie. As being a song of the Confederacy.
But he's still calling it Dixie.
Association with the South in general when it's in fact in Utah.
Yeah, and then the fact that they didn't even change the name, I think, until the mid 19.
It was
20.
It was
teens?
like a year or 2 ago.
Yeah, it was pretty recently. And again, the college you went to is technically a public institution now, but it was founded by Mormons. Like again, I'm not putting it out there, but it used to be part of this Mormon state apparatus. So.
Well, the things that Joseph Smith got up to was horrifying. Like when I went down this rabbit hole, he was like, he had taken over this town of Nauvoo, and he was kind of had a Mormon guard, a Nauvoo guard that he'd like sort of parade around like a military force through all these towns kind of thing. So he was basically had his own religious militia that he was cruising through towns. When a paper published something bad about him, he took his men and destroyed the press kind of thing, which is so, that's horrific. Like that's a First Amendment violation right there.
Right.
And it's just like he was out of control. He was absolutely out of control.
I'll be honest, I don't know if he's available right now, but like Materialist Dan is a fucking expert on debunking Mormonism. So
I know he was, and Materialist Dan offered me all kinds of help as well, which I really appreciate.
Awesome.
He's an champ. Yeah,
he's a hero. So.
Yeah, the second link I put in the private chat, if you want to put that into your YouTube chat, it actually is the link to the cartoon that's playing.
Okay. So if you want to see a horrific cartoon, look, I will give you fair warning. It is old, creepy, and racist, essentially.
There's a reason why it's banned. Yeah, there is a reason why it's banned.
Yeah, absolutely, and for good reason. And the Mormons have had to really back away from these central ideas, and the church doesn't talk about it anymore. They don't sort of discuss this, nor do they discuss sort of the polygamy situation that was obviously going on in Joseph Smith's time. They've sort of had to back right off of that, and sort of. There's been some ex-Mormons that have told about sort of the inner temple where you sort of get accepted. They sort of have these blood rites. You have to swear to cut your throat and cut your stomach if you ever divulge the secrets of the inner temple. It's to say it's cultish is a complete understatement. It's insanely cultish.
The funny thing
a lot
is, I found that there's a lot of similarity between the Mormon beliefs and Scientology.
I'll be honest.
Um,
I this evokes like thoughts of like this sounds like something you might hear from like Andrew Tate.
It's if you get really into it, especially if you get into the high thetas, where you start learning about Zanzu, it starts getting real crazy down the Scientology rabbit hole. But getting them to speak is like pulling teeth.
yeah, they won't interact with anybody not of their religion. Pressers, they call them. Like, because I'd love to debate a Scientologist. I won't lie. That would be awesome. Like, do you actually believe that, you know, a guy writing science fiction had visions and like the craziness of those beliefs is just incredible.
A lot of the
Incredible.
time, they actually go straight to the attack. You'll go, you must like children. They'll start talking about your crimes, and it's not even a debate. It's just them going psychotic for
Yeah.
whatever
No, I
duration.
encountered that. Yeah, I've encountered that. But they sort of just attack anybody that dares question their beliefs. And, you know, yeah, it's really a shame because it's just so damn interesting.
I'll see if I can get hold of my friend again because he used to be a fourth Thetan. So that's what he was before he decided that, okay, this is just getting a little bit too crazy. I'll see if I can get hold of him. I haven't talked to him in about 5 years, so.
Well, I don't feel that you have to. It's okay. It's just one of those things that I'm like, yeah. It's
Oh no, you might have an interesting sit down and talk to the guy, but he's been
sure.
avoiding contacting with as many people as possible because they really go bad on people like that.
Yeah, yeah.
He's told me some horror stories of what they did with him, and yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm really sorry to hear that. We've got a super chat as well from the Sinister Porpoise. And when you think of Sinister Porpoise, think of the Sinister Porpoise. I hope I got that right and didn't muck it up. But for $2, no, it isn't. Yeah, that's the consensus here, mate. But in the debate, it was as long as you define science as literally anything, then it is. Then it is.
Yeah, but what about Taoism?
Taoism.
Right. Oh, no, I wasn't bringing it up. I just wanted you to give me a short definition of it.
Okay, sunflower. Yeah, no, that was. You know what? I honestly, I think, I kind of, I don't dislike sunflower. I honestly don't. I think I see a lot of myself in sunflower. I think I was sort of angry when I was younger as well, and kind of so. I got a lot of patience for him because you know, it's just he's very angry, a very angry guy, just incredibly angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I kind of feel.
I think he's argumentative for the sake of argument. Like it seems like his natural go-to, right? Even like, you know, tell me your position. Well, this is my position. Well, no, that's not your position. This is your position. Like, who knows my position better than me? like, come on.
Don't worry. When he finally hits puberty, he might change.
You know,
It's just cruel, man.
I know, but I've been picking on him for about a year now, and he really hates it.
Well, again, I've been listening to way too much YouTube, so you know, I was actually listening to that yesterday, and I told myself I was not going to jump in the chat. So I'm like, yeah, I was like, because if I would have, I'd have started typing angry, and then I got to, you know, it's like, end of the quarter, got to grade papers.
That was really nice to be back at Amy's, though. I hadn't been to Amy's for a minute, you know, like, yeah, I've just been really busy. Oh, and sorry, I didn't notice you there. It is Materialist Dan, the one.
Look at that, the one and only
Materialist,
the MD.
What's up? How's it
going? MD.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep, you're good, man.
Yeah, like that was, man, the most basic Mormon. Like, like a 13-year-old Mormon could have said everything he said because it's all the same stuff they were taught in Sunday school. Like it's so boring.
Yeah, I think you'd have to believe it already to be convinced by it. I think that, you know, I don't know. I don't know who would listen to that and go, yeah, he did a good job. Like, honestly, maybe I'm biased. Well, I mean, I know I am biased, but, you know.
No, I just mean, even debating the subject, like most Mormons have the self-awareness to not even have engaged in like, that debate.
Right.
Like even within their worldview, it's stupid to say the Book of Mormon is scientific. Like it's just a dumb thing. Like it's just semantically stupid. Like.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I like I said, I don't know how you would go into that debate to defend it. And apparently that's how you just make science absolutely everything, and then you can argue it, apparently. But, you know, I sort of look at it and go, will that actually convince anybody? Of course it won't. You know, I mean, if I was a Mormon looking at that, I'd be like, that's terrible.
Well,
like,
I once found out talking to a Mormon, the subject of slavery came up, and one of the real dark spots in Mormon history is the fact that Utah was a slave territory, specifically expressed because Brigham Young made it so. He said, I believe in slavery. And that the natural position of the African American, or he actually said the Negro, is better to be as a slave with white caretakers over them than them being left to their own, life, so to speak, self-management.
Yeah.
Well,
and then, but
Mormonism, the religion that had a very dicey explanation for where black people came from.
Right. But interestingly,
take a black man. So
but again, so I asked a senior member of the Mormon Church one time, knowing this, and I found his answer very interesting. I'm like, well, did Brigham Young own slaves? He goes, Brigham Young never owned any African Americans. So I dug deeper because thinking, why did you answer it specifically that way? Because he owned a Native American.
Specific.
Because he owned a Native American woman. He bought a woman. I think her last name was Young, but it was like Pidash, because that was her name before he had purchased her. But he purchased a Native American slave. But Mormons will say he didn't own any African Americans. Okay, so on that technicality, but he still owns someone. They'll go, well, it was indentured servitude. Was she free to go ever during her life? No. Then she was a slave.
And someone paid in the church. Like the distinction between him owning something and the church owning something is like meaningless because it's all in his name. But like, so the church, as a subsidiary, I guess, whatever, like owned African slaves because like people paid their tithing with slaves. That's like on record. So like, that's pretty dumb.
Yeah. And people used to send their slaves to do the work around the church, the care and maintenance. Like if you really get into like early Mormonism in Utah, like how, again, Utah was told they couldn't enter and become a state with basically two things hanging over their head: polygamy and slavery.
Yep.
They weren't going to be admitted for those two things. So interestingly enough, both those things went away when they were really worried about wanting statehood.
Isn't that so much worse, though? The church owned the slaves, not the people?
Oh, yeah. Let's face it.
I think slavery just is bad. Like, I don't care who owns them, where it's an institution or an individual, it's all societally endorsed. That's the problem.
Yeah, but if it's the church that owns them, you can't even argue that, oh, people just make bad decisions, people aren't perfect. The church itself owned them.
Yeah, I think Dan's point of that you could pay your tithing in slaves either as labor or as whole complete commodities to be, used as an exchange good is problematic.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah,
wow.
and besides, like they weren't as valiant in the pre-Earth life, so like they kind of earned their place in life. So like we don't really need to feel bad for them, because like it's a just world because people earned their place. And Brigham Young taught that, and prophets after him taught it, and probably prophets all the way into like the 60s and 70s taught it. So like it's not even like lifetimes ago a Mormon thing. It's like people are still alive that were raised with that.
Well, didn't Jesus say, render unto Caesar's what Caesar's and give unto the church slaves? I'm sure he said that. I'm sure.
He did tell slaves to obey the masters, so.
Well, it wasn't. I think that was Peter. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Even the harsh ones. Fun times. Man, I got Nadia sending an email like complaining that like the Bible's bad and it has slaves, like the Bible beats its slaves. So I sent something back saying, oh, so just your wives in the Quran beating is fine, is it? And he got very upset. Very, very upset. But he still won't debate me. So yeah.
Well,
Just thought I'd call out Nadia.
Was he under the impression you were going to defend the Bible?
I don't know. He was trying to convince me that the Bible said that beating slaves is fine. I'm like, I 100% agree with you. And then he got Josh's channel into the mix to convince me of something that I already thought, which was so weird. I don't understand it.
Is he trying to somehow assert that Islam didn't endorse slavery until relatively recent?
Yes. Well, yeah, but he was sort of saying in the Quran it expressly forbids slaves, which is true. It says that that you will be damned if you have slaves, kind of thing, which is fine. But it does say that you can beat your wife as well if she doesn't listen to you, kind of thing. That it does say that too. And one thing does not detract from the other. It's weird. It's very, very strange, and he is a funny one.
One thing I think would have been interesting when he always goes back to like the Book of Mormon being about bringing people to Jesus is just talking about like Jesus in the Book of Mormon, because like the original Book of Mormon, as Joseph Smith wrote it or like had it translated, like Jesus was literally a different like type of Jesus. Like he was like a modal God. Like it was straight from like Methodism and like the context he was in. And he like it literally, the doctrine of Jesus in the Book of Mormon changed, and you can, so like it's just that alone. I don't know. It's funny because that's kind of their go-to answer on everything whenever they're stuck. It's all about going like bringing people to Jesus Christ, and it doesn't mean anything,
I never understand this obsession with them trying to beat their wives. If they truly defeated them, they wouldn't need to bother trying to beat them again and again. It's a play on words. I never understand the concept of why they are so obsessed with beating their wives, when if you just defeat them, then you never need to beat them again.
You never play a game where like the boss has a second health bar?
Yeah, things like Dark Souls.
Like Dark Souls, yes.
Sorry, I was playing into his.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bad joke. It's all a bad joke.
What was a bad joke was that debate I just participated in. That was a bad joke. And the joke was on me. Look, I'm a sucker. I went, the Mormon said debate the Book of Mormon, and I went, yes, this is one of my things. I feel kind of let down, to be honest with you. I feel like he could have done a real better job, and he did not do a very good job at all. I feel very let down.
You want to feel a little bit better, Mark?
What's that?
Go dig up my debate on the podcast.
Your debate on the podcast.
That was a train wreck. Over intelligent design.
I had that bookmarked. Who was debating? Wasn't it that
It was me, Malachi.
Yes.
Captain Obvious, and I forget the last guy. I can't remember his name.
Malachi sounds definitely like the name of someone in a cult. He's actually probably the leader of the cult.
Sounds like a Satanist, to be honest with you.
No, he's pretty level-headed, actually.
What's it in the science debates?
It's actually not on YouTube. I think they took it off because we all had faces for radio. It's still up on like podcasts like Amazon Kindle or whatever it is. Amazon Music, wherever podcasts can be found.
Where podcasts go to die.
Exactly, James Wolfe. I was thinking of the same book. Malachi is a character in Children of the Corn. Like,
oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. If you haven't read that, Malachi. I'm thinking, oh shit.
Oh man.
Like if
What
that's why I don't travel the Midwest, because you get into those areas of the cornfields. Stephen King fucked me up as a kid reading that book when I was too young.
Nah.
Come and play with us, Pat.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
mind Stephen King stuff, actually. I think it's pretty good. Pretty good.
But yeah, no. At the very least, Kyle made some sort of an effort to make some semblance of an argument. It wasn't great, but it was an argument. So every once in a while you get one debate where somebody is just completely incoherent.
We need to discuss the definitional use of good. So
Yeah.
I actually think I 100% think he was there so he can tell his Mormon friends that he's willing to debate this when no one else will. Like that's all it was about for him. He did not want shit about holding his ground or anything.
does he get is there any medal they can give him for doing that? Like some YouTube warrior medal that he can get and put on his lapel pin when he goes to church or something?
Like the cross of Nephi or something, like a purple Nephi, like it's a purple heart for taking the fall for Mormonism.
Do you think it's actually just a proxy for trying to use this type of argument in a future flat Earth debate?
Oh my gosh, flat Earth!
Oh, I hope not.
Actually, that's probably where I'm at, honestly. Because if you want to talk about misusing terms and usage of science and evidence, flat Earth, that's where it's at.
How is Whitson? I haven't seen him for a hot minute.
He won't debate me again.
Oh man.
He banned me from his server since he found out my credentials.
Oh, obviously.
No, I bet he did.
That's why Darth Dawkins won't talk to me about archaeology in the Levant.
Yeah.
I had one.
Well, in fairness, Darth Dawkins won't talk about anything specific about his religion.
Well, he said that he had, in his own words, good evidence to show the Exodus had occurred. And then I started vordiring him on the evidence, and he said he'd watched a documentary. That was his evidence. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. Yeah, that's great. Who cites the dictionary? Can I ask that? Does anyone cite the dictionary?
I feel like there's been a rise in the number of people who there's some flavor of Poe, but it's just try and be right in the most technical sense by just not giving a shit about context. Like, hey, if I string these 8 different definitions of words together, my position is maybe a little correct.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what we need to make sure. I don't know. I don't want to be pedantic, but you refer to definitions. I don't know if you cite definitions unless it's coming from an authoritative source for a technical application. So, again, when someone says I opened up Webster's dictionary to determine what science means, and I'm like, oh, so you're not in the Oxford Handbook of, Science Reference X. Nope, then you're not really defining science in a technical way.
I can name one person who does cite the dictionary because he's got it on his slides, if anyone can guess the name.
On the slides.
Ken Hovind.
Yeah, but the problem is his definition of science, I looked it up and it came from an Oxford dictionary circa 1900s. It's like an archaic definition.
You know who else likes to cite Oxford?
Kyle?
No. I'll DM you, but I've had it come up a few times in
Why DM me? Is it a secret?
Well, I don't want to just throw their name out.
I love citing Oxford.
One of our more libertarian anarchistic-minded friends from the server that we always tends to get in trouble.
Oh.
They were a mod at one point.
Oh, oh, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a fan.
Because if you're
Not a
trying to
fan.
argue that like taxation is theft, and you just wildly misdefine taxation and theft.
I think I know who you guys are talking about, and yeah, it's this whole this forced compliance to government is automatically coercive because there's no elective participatory element to
Right.
it, right? Again,
And people aren't allowed to leave ever, or
right.
Well, it's like those people that define fascism as left wing, and it's like, how did you get to that? And it's sort of, because it's a totalitarian system and it has nationalized this and that, and it's like, holy crap! Like you are taking certain things out of a system and saying because it has those, and communism has those things, then it must be a left. It's like, wow,
Well, it's people that just like they don't care about the rules of like that we're playing in a conversation. They care about they just don't value.
Yeah, that's one that's one debate I want to have with like a fundamentalist Christian conservative about the obvious antithesis the early church took to capitalism. The fact that the early church was communalistic, which basically is a theological communism, right? And the fact that no one wants to debate me on it. And I don't know why.
Jesus would have been the biggest left winger you could ever
No.
imagine.
If the Jesus of as he's portrayed in the Gospels existed, he was a leftist communist. Communalist, because communism didn't exist yet, right? But Jesus would have given Marx a run for his fucking money.
Mm-hmm.
I wanna. Next time I have a conversation with a Christian, I'm gonna try and tell them how woke Jesus was. Like that's really what I want to do. Like some right-wing fundamentalist Christian, I'm going to say, Jesus was woke, really woke.
How fun would it be to write a book where a libertarian goes back in time and just like makes little suggestive edits to Jesus? Be like, whoa, I get that you want to give these bread and fish to all these people, but they've got money, man. Maybe make them pay. Don't give them a free ride.
I actually don't agree because like Jesus was still about a autocracy, right? Like so, like fundamentally, the hierarchy, like it wasn't egalitarian fundamentally. So, like, I mean, it was left of the I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
I again, given the context of the day, I don't think he was the leftist of the left. But I don't think there was a left in that time period, right?
Yeah, he was for his time for sure, yeah.
But he
progressive. Right?
Well,
that's fair.
I think he was anti-social some of the social conventions of his day. Particularly, he was, and again, Christians aren't going to like this, but he was an ethno-nationalist. Like he was about the Jewish people. Like this whole Gentile stuff with Paul was way later. Like he was there. He was
everybody
there.
Was kind of an ethno-nationalist at that point. It was your tribe that you wanted to, conquer.
I'm not saying that's not, but it was.
It's like praising the Protestants for getting things right, but they only got it right because the Catholics had it wrong.
Well, how do you think the Protestants got it right? Protestants say they got it right.
That's true.
I mean, again, we can get it. We go down this rabbit hole for fucking days, but like, I'm not religious, but I'm not gonna defend Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy, but when they talk about tradition in the church, they are talking stuff they can trace back to the 2nd and 3rd fucking century. Like, like this idea, like Protestant Reformation was just like, we don't like this shit. And we think it's old fashioned and we want to get away from it. But when the people in the 3rd century looking back towards the leaders of the 2nd century, they were trying to build some continuity. Now, some of the shit they were making up, but they were in many instances trying to maintain continuity from an earlier period.
I mean, Jesus would have.
I mean, there was
Aggressive.
all these sects that were stamped out, like the
Oh, yeah.
Cathars and stuff throughout history.
Oh.
Like the whole idea that Christianity wasn't spread by the sword kind of thing has a very, very kind of generous description of what sort of spreading peacefully means when you've got branches going out and you're literally killing all of them. I don't know if you can claim that.
Well, and you know, there are several denominations of Christianity that existed only outside the Roman Empire because it was outside the legal prescriptions, right? Like there were certain heterodox sects, you know, particularly I'm thinking of the monophysites and others, right, that only existed either on the frontier regions or outside, external to the Roman Empire, because the Orthodox leaning sects were already, you know, gaining total control of the inner workings of the imperial bureaucracy. Yeah. So, but you know, hey, I didn't live back then, so I didn't have to deal with it. I just get to read about it. It was kind of cool. And I get to dig them up, and they're still dead. I have yet to dig someone up who's been raised from the dead.
I'm gonna make Pat mad. I've read Dad Brown. I know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck.
I'm now picturing one of these days that Pat's digging in the dirt, and then suddenly there's someone there just going, "Go away, I'm sleeping."
You know, you laugh, but I will convert back to Christianity in a fucking heartbeat, Bimsy. That I don't even need Jesus to appear. Somebody rises from the dead in spectral form in front of me and then reanimates, and other people see it. I'm on board. I don't need overwhelming evidence. I just need that.
It's weird that they always bring up these situations that never happen and say, "Oh, would you believe?" Like I got it today with Carl. He's like, "Would you believe if you like looked up and there was a God?" And, you know, saying to, and it's like, well, sure, make it happen, but until it happens, like, why would I believe? Like, come on, like, if I chopped your head off and then suddenly you were back alive, and it's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't happen. Like.
The answer is yes. I fucking believe. If the devil appears at the foot of my bed and my dog knows it's there and my wife goes, "Who's that guy with the horns?" I'm going to believe in the fucking devil. Like if I have multiple points of confirmation.
Right. But it's always these instances that never fucking happen. You know, like you know, somebody come back from the dead and I'm like, well, that doesn't happen. He's like, not that you're aware of. It's like, not at all. Like, come on. Like, yeah, I know your book says it happened, but that doesn't mean it happened. It doesn't. It's so weird.
I think that's actually the other thing. I think he was coming to this with the intention that you had to prove him wrong. He didn't have to prove himself right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, sure.
I'm just going to point out to those in the audience, Carrie Ann, love you. But like, again, devil appears, you know it's going to be a party because we all know that he's all about the here and now. So I'm on board because, you know, that's just the way it is.
If you're not careful and you just listen to Pat's wife, she'll tell you all the time that there's always been the devil in her room because she keeps talking about the horny bastard that's just at the end of her bed.
That may be more accurate than BMC actually is allowed to talk about in public.
Look, and as far as I'm concerned, at least the devil's making an effort. Like, you know, if God doesn't want to show up and the devil's making an effort, at least he cares. Like, come on now.
Yeah, the devil, you know, the devil would probably like be really cool to kick back with. He wouldn't probably want you to worship him. He'd be really cool with just hanging out, drinking beers, and like turning lead into gold for you.
Well, I mean, the devil's the only one in the Bible that didn't lie.
Yeah, he's pretty cool in the temple videos.
So was it a pound of LSD, a pound of mushrooms, or a pound of weed that you wanted? Yes, please. I'm just glad the Pat got the joke.
But I was reading this passage in the Bible. There was like 2 Thessalonians. It was like that God tricks everybody to make everybody think that he's not real. It was really weird. I was reading and I haven't really heard of it before, but it was sort of like this God makes everybody believe something, and it's like that's kind of weird thing to read in a book because it makes something that's not true. I'll see if I can find it.
It's one thing that no one has ever been able to answer to me. If he wants people to worship through honesty, why is he so dishonest and hiding?
No, I don't know. There's a question.
To he who's given much, much is expected, right?
It's
That's-
very
that's
important that
they'll
you
tell you.
you go through and you do your own research and then forget about all of the research you've done and uncritically accept that he is true.
For what
Yeah,
it comes
so,
down
okay.
to, it would take far less effort to just allow things to happen naturally. Like if there was a global flood, you don't fiddle with the geological record and just allow the geological record to show, look, oh, the Earth was covered in water. Wouldn't that just be so much more convincing to people like myself?
But also the flood was not to cover up any sort of mistake, which God doesn't make. It was just for fun, a fun beach trip. Yay!
Dude, horny angels. I mean, who has that story?
The second Thessalonians 9 through 12 is the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie. And so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in wickedness.
Wait, so that they will misbelieve the lie or that they will believe the lie?
That they will believe the lie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mormons are particularly what do you call it? Predisposed to conspiratorial thinking because it's built into their worldview. Like they literally believe Satan pays and whispers to other priests and religious leaders to lie and mingle philosophies of men with scripture and so for him the idea that Satan is paying NASA or running a global conspiracy it's not it's a no it's completely within his worldview and a normal Mormon's worldview but they've kind of gone mainstream so they distance themselves from the more extreme side of that but they are extremely conspiratorial so the idea that Satan could organize a global lie is definitely what they believe.
But that's sort of culty behavior, right? Like, don't believe your senses, don't believe what you see, believe
Doubt your
what the
doubts.
church says, and that's all.
Yeah, I mean, they literally say that a few years ago, that was the general conference thing was doubt your doubts, and they say things like that, don't rehearse your doubts with non-believers. They're very explicit in that. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna read something. I normally don't pull this out, but I think Dan will appreciate it. So in
Pat, please don't whip anything out. We've heard about it.
No, it was 2021. The Salt Lake Tribune did some research, and the name of an article they published was QAnon, the big lie. What will it take for Latter-day Saints to stop believing them? And in their study, it was by Peggy Fletcher Stack, right? If almost half the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believe in the big lie about the 2020 presidential election, and almost a quarter of them subscribe to many, or if not all, of the QAnon conspiracy theories, what will it take? What does this say about their ability to discern truth? And then it's an entire research and then commentary on it. And then this guy named Quinn Monson is talking about how not only do Mormons identify along political lines, they associate political and theological lines as indistinguishable. It's actually it's an interesting article, but when you think about it, half of Mormons believe that the election was rigged, and a quarter of them are at least highly associated, if not fully convinced, of all the Q conspiracy stuff. That's 1 in 4 Mormons.
Yeah, this
Q believers.
I think in the 80s under Ezra Taft Benson, he was one of the prophets, and he was actually a member of the cabinet of a president of a conservative president at the time. He was the I think head of the Department of Agriculture, and he was a prophet, their president, and following that, and he basically married church doctrine and culture with conservative ideology, and from that point on, that's been 100% the case.
Mm,
Pretty wild.
that is wild, yeah.
But
And that's sort of
prior-
theocratical thinking.
So if you're talking to a Mormon, there's a 1 in 4 chance they think Q is real. Sorry,
Yeah.
I've had 4 beers, so this shit's
was
getting
that
funnier.
1 in 4 globally or just in the U.S.?
It's U.S.
They're pretty
It's
US
got to be
centric.
US.
It's United States.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
it's something like 90% of Mormons are within the U.S.
No, that's actually not true. There's more in South America than North America.
Really?
Yeah, the church
Really?
is larger outside of the U.S. than in it. Yeah.
That's obscene.
But one thing she did find in this study that was pretty funny is that white evangelical Protestants were 61%. Mormons were only 46. So they weren't as bad as the white fundy evangelicals.
It's funny. Yeah.
Uh,
No, I mean
Yeah.
Mormons are, how to put it, like within the church, the politics are like they're more neocon than far right. Like they're more like the culture doesn't like all that stuff is sort of not. I don't know, man. Like it's probably different now with like in the last year because since I've been out, but like it just they were more like I don't know. It just they weren't as far right as like you like they were probably a little less far right than like an evangelical church that I grew up in. Makes sense.
I don't know, man. It just, yeah.
I mean, culturally, like they still had plenty of liberals. They had like I don't know, like culturally, but I get what you're saying. Like they are pretty extreme in terms like culturally, like relative to like an average American. Like, but yeah, I guess it makes sense when you put them next to like the Duggars. They're looking a little bit.
Oh, there's that documentary on Netflix. I don't know if I want to watch it or not. It's like, oh, has anyone seen it?
Yeah, a little bit. Like it's I mean they're really not
Is it tough to watch?
systemic problems, but yeah. Anyway, but the whole I don't know. No, I can't.
Well, I watched that Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey documentary, and that was horrifying. That's horrifying. Just
Yeah, like you'll notice, like you're talking about history, like spreading the sword. Mormons talk about Joseph Smith a lot, like his life. They have like this pretty picture of his life that they believe in. And then they're real big about the pioneers, like going to Utah, but like that's it. Like you don't talk about what happened after they got to Utah, right? Like that's not part of the cultural like identity of their history.
What happened when they got to Utah, Dan?
A lot of like really nice, peaceful, loving, kind stuff. Definitely got along with the natives. Didn't genocide them. You know, it was cool.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I mean, you know, if you're raised a Mormon, that's how you see it. But yeah, they definitely fucked shit up, and you know, almost went to war with the United States, and you know, a bunch of nice shit.
Yeah. Again, you know, I think whatever. I just think that they wanted a theocracy, they couldn't have it, so they went second best, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Joseph Smith wanted to go out west and create a theocracy explicitly. Like that was not, like he wasn't vague at all about his intent of that. Brigham Young, like, took up and, like, you know, tried, but.
Well, I do think it's pretty important though to realize that each time that it's been almost detrimental for the church's existence, that a Latter-day Saint prophet has prayed and received a revelation that went along with what the mandate of U.S. policy was. Because again, you know, several people pointed out, you know, that's pretty funny. Chris G's like, yeah, it's just like a allowing African Americans to be full members of their church happened at the exact same time they were threatened with losing their tax exempt status.
Yep. And the amazing thing is the amount of times that God handed down dictates that Joseph Smith just happened to want, like the polygamy thing, where he was basically, he lied to all of the congregation and stuff that he was in these I call them marriages. It was like he used the term they were welded to him or something like that. They were sort of extramarital marriages kind of thing. And lied. Sorry,
sealed.
That's right. All these women were sealed to him. But then he was given a vision about like how the church should accept polygamy, kind of thing. Just coincidentally, just.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, he was just a baller, bro. That's just the way he was rolling hard. Like, he was just.
Well, the disturbing thing is his letters to his wife, Emma Hale, or Emma Smith, and sort of he sort of wrote to her saying that this is what God wants. God's appeared, like the angel appeared with a flaming sword and said, God wants you to accept this, because she was very upset by it. She was incredibly upset by it, because he'd been lying to her about being in these polygamous relationships. Like, she didn't know. And sort of, so his letters sort of say he told her that she had to accept it because God commanded it to her to.
Oh man, it's interesting. Like the Book of Mormon was like anti-polygamy. Like, it has a thing where it's not cool, so that's kind of funny. But like the letter to his wife was like, it was a all but outright threat on her life. Like, it was literally, if you don't get in line, like, God's going to give a commandment for you to go away. Like, it was very explicitly a threat in her life. And it's interesting. Emma isn't like super innocent. Like, her compromise was if he could like have his women, she could have like a man she wanted. And Joseph Smith even allowed that. And she asked a married man to like be in that arrangement. And him and his wife like immediately left and like. Wait
a minute. So is it like that scene from Meet the Millers where they're trying to sneak into the tent of the other people, right? And it's like, okay, because I want to know for that reference point.
Yeah. So that's actually what happened. I mean, again, this is from that couple's account. So, if you want to.
Oh yeah, because they're gonna lie about the fact that hey, Joseph Smith told us that we could do a triple with his wife, and they fled the church and all that after probably giving a lot of their money, if not all their money, to the church, because that's the way early Mormons operated. So
but like, so Emma, like, basically after that, Joseph Smith was like, hey, God basically, like, you kind of fucked us by you doing that, and basically like she like sat down and shut up basically. And so like,
if Joseph Smith was alive today, he'd be rolling around with a shirt that says "Don't hate the player, hate the game." You know it. That's how he'd be fucking.
He'd be Red Pill right now.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's just the whole idea that the same seeing stones that he was using to try and find lost treasure are the same ones that helped him translate. Like, he didn't have much game, is what I'm trying to get across. Like, his con was very basic. Like, it was very basic. And he didn't really change much of it. He was using the same magic stones that he was arrested for, glass seeing, which was basically defrauding people by saying, hey, using this magic stones, I can find treasure. Never found any.
No, I mean, that's kind of the fundamental problem with Joseph Smith, is he was very short-sighted. So he was always just trying to get through the current con. I mean, he was really good at being charismatic, and people either loved him or hated him immediately, which is like normally how it is with people like him. And so like he would wrap people around his finger. He was good at that, but like he was constantly running from place to place because he was trying to outrun the consequences of his cons, and like that was literally why he was moving his whole life. And that's what's funny. Like, they're like, well, he was convicted of fraud So that means what? He's a liar, and we're like, I mean,
Yeah,
it definitely like raises the probability a lot.
Right. Right.
Right.
That's why I was talking about what's his credibility in sort of writing this. Like, if you're going to say, hey, this is the authority that wrote this science book, what's his credibility like?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's one of those things, I don't get it. And I don't think people really think about what they're saying with like, so I know he was convicted. I mean, if Bernie Madoff wrote a book on finance and said, hey, I know I've been convicted of all these bad financial crimes, but trust me, I'm going to go legit this time. Would people believe him? No.
I think people would put billions into that crypto coin.
Well, yeah, and the thing is that the Mormon Church doesn't make this. They kind of don't tell their average parishioners sort of this stuff. They kind of keep it on the DL. A lot of Mormons have no idea that sort of Joseph Smith was wanted in 3 states, that he was convicted of multiple crimes, some having nothing to do with his religion, like threatening a judge and, sort of destroying a printing press and things like that, just grievously breaking the law. They have no idea. Like, they don't know. They've never been told this is actually the history. If you go to the Mormon websites and stuff, admittedly, they do say in there what sort of happened, but they say he died a martyr, and that's not true. A mob took him out.
Well, I mean,
because they were sick of his crap.
But yeah, I mean, he had a gun in his hand, for what that's worth.
Yes, and he shot somebody with it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I wish I had more information on, but Carrie is also talking about how there are allegations that Mormons that are in archaeological and anthropology, I'm just going to use those terms in scare quotes, have done quite a bit of damage in an attempt to quote unquote prove the Book of Mormon to actual archaeological evidence. So again, I wish I had. I don't do a lot of Mesoamerican stuff, but I do know that for a while they were heavy into attempting to prove the Book of Mormon in the 60s and 70s, and it ended up being very junk science in many cases. But
science,
yeah, and the other thing too that people talk about, again, BYU University. If you go back for like the last 40 years, and
what's that? What's BYU?
Brigham Young University.
Okay.
It's like the Mormon flagship university, and you look at the ratings on their history and anthropology departments. Like, there were schools that would not take students from BYU's history department into their history grad programs because they were considered to be improperly trained and indoctrinated, rather than like the book of like from a Mormon point of view, there was a class like the Book of Mormon as a historical source. Like, again, although there's no evidence for it at all, right? Like, there was some real problems with their programs. And I'm not saying they've straightened it out, but they've probably course corrected enough to kind of get the worst of the criticisms off their back.
But in fairness, there were like I was pointing out, individual Mormons who have spoken out that the book is not accurate, and that's Mormons from inside their own structures that have said, hey, this evidence just does not exist, and credit to them, they're being honest. But there's all the other dishonest ones. But the whole point is that nobody outside of Mormonism believes this. It's sort of the whole flood account. If you don't have a religion that believes in the flood, you never come to that conclusion. And that is not the conclusion you would come to. You have to already believe that that's the case in order to come to that conclusion.
So, in Mormon thought, like the older generation of sort of the intellectual side of it, like the apologetics, is this idea of synergy, like between like ancient religions. Like Hugh Nibley was a BYU professor that was like the biggest influence on. So like most people would kind of harmonize all the problems by having this view that everything kind of points towards their religion being true, right? It's kind of just a way of harmonizing everything in a sort of big picture way. And Hugh Nibley had all these intellectual like books that bullshit threw everything together, right? And it was very
Right.
And then a newer thought nowadays is more like a catalyst theory, where like I mean it's pretty lazy intellectually, but like there's not like there's not a whole lot of like actual effort put into dealing with the criticisms. There's more effort put into giving members a good enough story to relieve their cognitive dissonance, and that's all they really care about. And that really is something that like
Wow.
Kyle's such a unique, like for him, like that's what I mean. Like he's feigning a concern at all of debating because he doesn't care about convincing anyone. Like he's a missionary. I didn't really care about convincing anyone. Like I don't think most did.
Then
Like
why were you doing it?
no, I mean like so like I was convinced it had the power to change people's lives, and I wanted to help people. So like there's an authentic like desire to help people, but like
Right.
there's just this disregard for trying to actually convince someone because there's this like self-awareness that you can't. It's either people either are gullible enough to want it to be true, and then they willingly walk down the path to becoming convinced it's true, or you immediately realize they're not going to walk down that path. That's it, right? And there's this like unwillingness to engage in criticisms even within the intellectual side of Mormonism because they've come to the self-awareness that they can't engage intellectually with these criticisms, right? And so
do you think maybe that gets dressed up as people are either already willing and they're just waiting to hear the word of God?
100%.
Or
Yeah. Like that's built like that's literally like word for word in the missionary manual. It's like we're trying to find the people that have been prepared to receive us, right? And like those who aren't, right? Like people that are assholes or have like shit to say, it's like, oh, they're just not ready, or like, and you move on, right? And like it's just kind of I mean it is built into the rhetoric, right? Like that's already there.
Wow.
But yeah, my point is like in a debate like that, like a Mormon isn't like they really like if you're following like the modern advice of your leaders and everything, like you shouldn't be engaging in debates on YouTube, right? Like he's being disobedient to his leaders. Like he's a Jack Mormon to an average Mormon. Like he's a flat earther. Like even if a Mormon believes that, it's like it's not like you want to admit that to your neighbors because you're self-aware that makes Mormonism look bad, and that's more important than standing up for flat earth is making Mormonism look good. So like he's not a good Mormon, you know what I mean? Like he's not a good representation of it from an internal
So why do you think then? But what do you think the motivation is then?
Oh, he like that's all. I mean, I'm not gonna like psychoanalyze him, but like that's clout and like trying to like I mean, there's personal stuff going on, maybe for seeking validation, and I don't really care to. But like it's not
Okay,
like
no,
he wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't there to like convince anyone that Mormonism is true. Like he there wasn't like an ounce of thought in his head that he was going to like change anyone's mind in this debate. Like
maybe he was just trolling me, like everybody does. Everyone trolls me, so
well,
maybe it's just Mormon trolling me.
I mean,
there's a first.
I mean, it doesn't seem like someone who's just getting off on trolling. Like there's better ways to do that.
That's true. Like, yeah, true.
It's more just like like I'd waste time as a missionary like arguing with someone, and like we were always like we're not there to do that, and like you don't feel good after, and it's like, but like you feel you're like you're validating, or you're like, I don't know, man. It's just it feels good to like try to. Well, actually, to be honest, the most common thing is probably maybe not him. I don't know, but most Mormons or missionaries, they're trying to convince if they are trying to convince someone, they're trying to convince themselves, right? Like they're really trying to bounce that off you to validate their own. But anyway,
welcome, Grayson. How are you doing, buddy?
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Mark, I just got
Welcome.
home, so I haven't seen the debate yet, but
That's okay.
I'm very eager to go back and listen to it because
just dial back on that eagerness about 40 to 45%, and you'll be there, mate. There you go.
Because I'm interested because I really have not really had many discussions about God with Mormons before specifically. Like I barely have been around Mormons much beyond seeing their actually like admittedly really cool looking architectural stuff. Like I've been to Salt Lake City, and specifically when I lived in San Diego, like their temple in San Diego looks like really cool and interesting from the highway. So I got to give them that much at least. But
Sure.
there are two really interesting facts I got to share about Utah, and both of them are due to Mormonism, which is just very interesting that Utah has the highest amount of both plastic surgery and tattoos per capita of like the states. And the reason why is because of Mormonism for both instances. The tattoos thing is because when somebody leaves the Mormon church, one of the first things they do is get a tattoo because it's outlawed by Mormonism. And then so there's a lot of ex-Mos in Utah that all have tattoos. Yeah, more so than the general American population. And then the plastic surgery thing, they usually get married like really, really young and like pop out a ton of kids really quick in their early 20s. And so like a lot of like Mormon moms, whenever they get into like their 30s or 40s, they want to have like a hot phase that they were kind of robbed of in their youth. So that like more like plastic surgery is very, very common among like, wives and Mormon wives. So just two interesting things about Utah that are from a direct result of Mormon ideology.
Okay. Yeah, and we didn't even get onto the magic underwear. Like, I can't believe we haven't mentioned that yet. You want to take that one down?
I mean, it's like they have garments they wear when they go through the temple. They're like white underwear that's symbolic of purity and covenants and blah, blah, blah. They're weird about it. They're pretty weird about it.
Yeah, they are.
Isn't it supposed to be reactive to certain substances?
Wait, what?
In modern days?
What?
I mean, there's a lot of like folklore around them, like, but it's just common folklore.
But I've in my research, I came out like they've got symbols on them that are supposed to protect you from evil, kind of thing. Like, so they've got certain.
Well, yeah. So like, there's probably like prophets that have taught it literally, or different like cultural pockets that believed in like physical protections it could provide. But like, I feel like generally it's always meant to be like it protects you in a metaphorical sense because it reminds you of your covenants, and then those keeping the covenants protects you in a literal way. So like I don't know. It's just they're weird, but like that's it. Like I don't know. They're not like they're not.
But everybody's heard either from a military person or a cop who's a Mormon some story about I got hit with ordnance or I was shot and it went through everything and then stopped either in my Book of Mormon that I was carrying in my pocket or right before it would have went into my skin at my garment. And I'm like, well, then just don't wear the vest then. I mean, let's test this hypothesis.
Oh, it sounds like you just need Mormons to make more body armor. I think somebody's really
It's Dan.
Yeah.
got a lot of feedback.
Yeah, like an elite Mormon corps of the military that's just like decked out in the magic underpants. I mean, this would be like even like that's who they should have sent like instead of the Navy SEALs for like the most elite missions,
Trust me, if a bunch of guys with M4s showed up on a beach dressed in Mormon temple clothes, Al Qaeda would laugh themselves into fucking submission. Like they would think they're being invaded by a bunch of bakers with green sashes.
Forget the Space Force. We get
Mormon Force.
Yeah.
Hello.
Moforce.
Oh.
Hey, Don Doc Dano, welcome. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm all right. Just give me 2 seconds. Gotta plug in my earbuds.
No, absolutely not.
He's got to put on.
Not.
He's putting on his Mormon outfit for the
Kick
show.
him out. That's it.
Have you heard of some of like the weird like sex things that the Mormons do, like at BYU? Some of the practices to like avoid premarital, like they have tried to avoid premarital sex by like not having an up and down motion, like a hump, a thrusting motion. So what they'll do instead is that they'll have like a friend.
Do you know the term for that?
Soaking.
I found the term for that: soaking.
Yeah, exactly, soaking. So like they just like have it in, but they don't move back and forth. They have like a friend or something shake the bed back and forth. So like it's like, hey, I'm not the one doing it, okay? Like I'm just here.
It's my wingman. Blame him. That's if God's gonna smite anybody, it's gonna be the wingman shaking the bed.
Let's just address that though. Like if there were ever a term for wingman,
I just got
it.
home. Did I click on the wrong stream?
Is it my stream? Then yes.
We're talking about Mormonism.
Yes.
Yeah. My only experience with Mormons is this one kid from high school who I used to argue with all the time in gym.
Well, I mean, I did my fair share of arguing today, but I feel let down. I feel really let down. It's that's okay. I mean, it wasn't too bad. It just was not as what I was expecting. That's all.
Was it? Did he like try to justify the Book of Mormon being scientific?
No.
Oh,
have you ever argued with that guy Nadir that like argues is the Quran scientific? I think he actually.
I talked about Nadir. He's a funny one, Nadir. He's really weird. He won't debate me, but he's really weird.
Yeah, his quote unquote debate with Aaron Ra was just infuriating.
No, he won't. He says that he's not doing atheist debates at the moment. He's focusing on Christians. So it's like, okay, Nadir.
Well, you should tell him you converted.
Well, the
he
funny
wants
thing
to
is,
he wants to team up to go after Christians, and I'm like, no, I don't want to team up with.
Well, to be fair, Muslims do have the best philosophical destruction of the Trinity that I've seen. Like as a religious system, as one theist to another, they just like push the cart over on Trinitarianism. like they've done it's such a big part of their theological.
What's their angle? Kind of.
They approach it from a philosophical. They start with basically building a logical argument and a philosophical argument, and then applying non-contradiction and the law of identity.
Yeah.
And you can't win because it's the same thing with the the idea that three things can be one thing. I mean, Trinitarianism fails both as a logical and as a philosophical construct. I mean, it just you can't defend it. And watching Christians go, I'll beat that Muslim because I know my beliefs are true, and then watching them get beat into submission badly is pretty fun to watch. At least in my
I'm having an argument in my comments at the moment with somebody that's trying to explain like why the Trinity works logically, and it's like it really doesn't. Like you can't just sort of say that there's three things that is also one.
So if we follow the crucifixion, just real quick, we follow the crucifixion. And again, I'll translate from the Greek, which is actually in Aramaic. But my God, why have you forsaken me? Okay, forsaking is abandonment, which includes separation, which means that they aren't a unified being. So, like, and if the Trinity at any point is non-Trinitarian, then the Trinity concept is not an eternal concept because it's not overarching. So,
well, the last thing I got to was asking them whether Jesus was omnipotent, and they said yes. And then I asked, is the Father God omnipotent? And they said yes. And I'm like, well, in order to be omnipotent, one would have to have control over the other. They'd have to have power over the other, and then that would make the other one not omnipotent. You cannot have two omnipotent beings.
Yep.
It's not possible.
Hey, Mark, you know who would agree with you on Trinitarian thing is Kyle. He would agree with you on that. You should try to partner up with him.
Oh, I'm willing to, sure. I mean, he'll just say that, like, his definition of the Trinity includes.
Oh no,
Harry Potter or
Mormons
something.
don't believe in the Trinity.
Yeah, but I'm just saying he'd probably say that his definition of the Trinity includes Harry Potter, and that nullifies it or some shit. You know, like he'll just go to the dictionary.
Quick question, just on one thing being three things. Like, if one thing serves multiple purposes, could it be considered multiple things? As an example.
Okay.
Or just as an example, like let's say you have a meter stick. You can use it to measure. You can use it as a walking stick, or you can use it as a weapon. It is simultaneously all three of those, depending on what you need it for.
Right, but you've got to understand entities in philosophy. Like, entities are basically things, and all the attributes of that entity makes it that thing. So it already has all of the attributes to do those three things, but it isn't three entities. It is one entity doing three functions, basically.
Dr. Dino, it's not a meter stick. It is a stick that's 1 meter in length that can also be used as a weapon or a walking stick. It has three properties: length, support when you walk, and offensive value, right? That's how
three
you
attributes. Yep.
So it's not a situation of like A equals B equals C equals 1.
Right.
You're both missing the most important aspect of what it could be used for, though.
Do we really want to know what you think it could be used for?
I already said it in chat, so you can make whatever you wish.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I figured.
I didn't even have to look, and I knew what it was, and then I checked to make sure I was right.
You got to make sure you're right. Yeah.
But I mean, and I hate to say it, but like I've heard a few Muslim theologians like that they got that anti-Trinitarian shtick down, and I have yet to see a Christian successfully navigate it in a convincing way. All they do is backpedal, and all they all retreat to, it's a mystery, which is the defeater, right? Okay, if your answer to an argument is special pleading, then you're done. You lose.
Well, that's why Kyle wanted to take the debate where he did deny it, because like that's what you are taught to do, is to make it abstract, right? Because like Mormons are great at arguing with other Christians. Muslims are good. Like all theists are good at arguing with other theists, like about abstract theology and doctrine and all that shit. Because like the burden of proof is like, I mean, it's like, it's literally just axioms, right? It's just what it's just having different starting point. Like, it's just so, I don't know, but they don't want to argue. But none of them want to talk to atheists or skeptics. None of them do.
Right. Well, I mean, that's understandable.
Well, I also think that there's this religion has a confirmational bias towards affirmation, right? So you trust your feelings. And if my argument elicits feelings from you, you may be swayed because that's the conditioning, both psychological and sociological, that you have towards religion. So if what I say to you inspires you, then that's confirmation for you that it's true, whether or not it's actually demonstrably true.
Yeah, if I met someone who didn't at least, like, as a missionary, who didn't at least like believe in God and they answer prayers, I had no idea where to go with that. I was like, oh shit, man, like that's like a whole stick.
Uh-oh. You can't touch Mormon Jesus.
Mormon Jesus. Mormon Jesus.
I just got to say this.
I think you just earned all of us a place in hell.
This is awesome.
Awesome. You're joining me in hell. Welcome.
Long Mormon Jesus. Long ago, a spirit child on one of these planets was conceived. Through an unidentified God is on his wife named Elohim. Elohim was conceived. This spirit child was later born to human parents.
These chicks are hot, but they kind of look like sisters. Just saying. I said those chicks are hot, but they kind of look like sisters.
Yeah, they probably are. Like, yeah.
Mormon Jesus. Mormons believed in Mormon Jesus.
I'm afraid of getting a copyright strike, to be honest with you. I won't lie. I'm like, how much of this will it pick up?
Obedience to Mormon Jesus.
Okay, that's enough. That's hilarious.
So
That is actually hilarious.
Somebody just threw up a super chat. I don't know if you
Oh,
read
did
it real
they?
quick, but I want to kind of get something off of that a little bit.
Oh. And David Street for $5. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it. Great debate, Mark. I'm not a Mormon fan, but they need to send out a better hero to defend their faith. Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to agree. I was kind of really let down by how bad he was. I would have wished somebody that actually didn't just like debates about definitions are always so bad, right? Like they're just so bad. Sorry, but you had something to say, Viper?
Yeah, I just I feel like at some points when you get into the situation where like they're not sending their best, but at some point
They're 18.
it feels like it's almost. I feel like you get into some sort of a platforming issue when like it feels bad to try and debate somebody who you don't think they're very representative, you don't think they're making great arguments, and you feel like they might be misrepresenting the whole.
I'm going to put this out there. I don't think Kyle was a bad representation of the Mormons I know.
Did you have something to share, Grayson? I saw you put something up there, man.
Oh, I just thought we were memeing, so I had like a little a funny. Hold on, I'll pull it back up here.
You can meme if you want. Look,
yeah, I would agree that
I can't meme and then let nobody else meme. You can.
Dan, if you're gonna validate my point, please make sure you make that point.
Oh yeah, Kyle represents an average Mormon, but like most Mormons put on a mask when there's not only Mormons in the room, and he wasn't doing that. Like he was being a genuine Mormon that you would be in Sunday school, which is what was really to me, right? Like he wasn't putting the mask on that you're supposed to put on, right? And that's kind of a unique thing about him. And I mean, I guess you can kind of appreciate that, but like it's something that other Mormons won't appreciate about him.
I just want to point out that that's a real billboard there. That is not just a meme. There's a real picture of a billboard in the U.S. I think somewhere, but they are threatening us with meteor strikes.
Nice.
I'll risk it.
Hate it.
I'll risk it.
I hate it. Get my dinosaurs out of your billboard.
Yeah, to that I would just respond with Odin promised that he would be getting rid of the frost giants, and I don't really see any frost giants around. So,
yeah. By the way, quick question: does anyone know how to like hide the pause screen on a paused video on YouTube?
Hide the pause screen.
Yeah, like you know how when you pause something, a screen pops up over the video.
Like the pause icon.
Yeah, like on PC, it's a pause icon. It shows the timeline and like the title at the top.
I don't think you can, as far as I'm aware. I'm not aware of it. If you can, no.
I wonder if there's a ad blocker or some sort of extension that'll do that.
Dang, I'm trying to get a thumbnail put together, and I got the perfect shot, but the timeline's in the way.
Nice.
I mean, if I pause the stream right now, I don't get anything popping up. So
it is so in this season.
It's all the rage. All the kids are doing it.
It has something to do with the month, right? June.
Yeah, something about the month. I can't remember exactly.
I think everybody is mandated to only have gay sex for the month of June. That's what it is, right?
Grayson, it's the season for the pleasing.
Yes.
Yes, June, the 60th month.
The 60th. Nice.
Oh, Mark, I just want to say that I realized, I think like last week, that I wasn't subscribed to you on this channel. I've been subscribed on my personal channel this whole time. So I just want to say, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. So everyone who's watching this, just make sure that you're subbed to Mark with the notification bell. Make sure you're set up, because I thought I was for like this whole like month basically, and like I just noticed the other day.
Okay, well, I might wrap it up there, guys. I want to thank you for 2-hour after show, a couple of hours debate, and that blew my head. Like seriously, that was crazy.
I do have to thank you guys. At least now I know why Jude's being such a pain in the ass.
I feel dumber having done that debate. I honestly do.
Hey, I got your pun. I appreciate it.
I mean, you've had worse debates, right, Mark?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, at least, Carl was pretty nice. He just kept interrupting like constantly, kind of thing. I couldn't get 2 words out before he interrupted me, and then accused me of monologuing. And it's like, okay, well,
What got me was he accused you of monologuing when you hadn't even finished a sentence yet.
Right, which was weird and strange, and maybe monologuing means something else in his dictionary. I don't know. Right, I don't know. But I want to thank everybody for coming on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and that debate. If you haven't seen it, yeah, just take your enthusiasm down about 40% and then go into it, or better yet, play it on double speed. That's a good idea too. Yeah, but I'll post it as per usual. I will get that up. I want to thank the audience for joining us. And as always, actually, that's what I've got to do. I'm trying to be more organized about this. I do want to thank all of my members who are awesome people. I know Beamsy's in there, so thank you, Beamsy. And Caterpillar, Ember, everybody, thank you so much. And memberships are available. If you want cool icons, like Keep Calm and Masturbate, which is my personal favorite.
Okay,
I've not been here for 24
all
hours.
right. Can I have one more minute? Because I just got something sent to me by somebody who's watching the stream.
Oh yeah, go for it, mate.
The National Park Service, on their site, National Park Service, and they wrote an article on Chapter 1, Race, Slavery, and Freedom: Utah Slaves and Saints. I guess many Mormons protest the National Park Service's historical account. I'm going to put the link in there, but this is like the official government position on the early settlement of Utah, and the Mormons are very upset about it. Here, I'm going to put it in the private chat so Mark can share.
What you mean, like the documented history of the fucking state?
Yeah. So there's like one paragraph this person highlighted for me. I'm just going to read it, and so it talks about all of the actual how oppressive to Native peoples and African Americans it actually was. Talks specifically about Brigham Young and other people, about the fact that Mormons were immediately enacting non-marriage laws, that anyone having sex with someone of the African race could be fines ranging from $5,000 to $5,000 at that time. And then there was quite a bit of other stuff, but it said, but this is the article
on your resume, right? Yeah, that's going to hurt on your resume. Yeah.
And understand, this is the official National Park Service, and it says, despite its benevolent veneer, the act, talking about the earlier act against Native peoples and blacks, the act was accumulation of anti-black sentiments that had begun to emerge before the Mormon pilgrimage to the Great Salt Lake Basins. In Nauvoo, Mormon leaders had begun to restrict African American political and civil rights by legally preventing them from voting, holding municipal office, marrying whites, or joining the militia. These racist trends intensified in the wake of Joseph Smith's murder and Western immigration. By early 1852, Utah blacks, enslaved and free, were banned by the territorial legislature and by municipal officers in the later Great Basin settlements from voting, holding public office, or belonging to the territorial militia. These anti-black prescriptions were also written into the Constitution of the proposed Mormon state of Deseret in 1856, 1860, and 1862. Even though the blacks were there before the Mormons had gotten there.
Yeah, that looks bad on your resume. Yeah, I understand why they want to do away with it.
This is an official government website.
Yeah, big oof. Well, you got to own up to your history. Maybe apologize for it is a good idea. Take some apologies around. Might be, instead of pretending it never happened, because those who do not sort of what was it? Those do not remember history are doomed to repeat it. So definitely they should acknowledge what they've done. Wow, oof, big oof.
Those who do not remember history are doomed to repeat it.
Yes, yeah. So
can I drop just two really quick Mormon facts just to wrap up? Really quick. One, the Mormon Church is in control of one of the largest amounts of private capital, like private equity funds I think it might be the largest private equity fund in the world. It's like the Mormon Church has access to a ridiculous amount of money. And
there was a thing about them hoarding. They're worth like $150 billion in just capital hoarded away.
Yeah, it's insane.
That they invest, and they actually bailed out one of their companies using money that had been gotten tax-free, which is a breach of
And the only other thing I was going to say, which is pretty creepy and weird, is that the entity in the world that keeps the largest, most detailed and extensive genealogical records in the world is the Mormon Church. And they have been keeping detailed genealogical records of like pretty much everyone in the United States. Like if you died in the United States in the last, like the history of the United States, and you had like in the newspapers an obituary, like it's cataloged in the Mormon Church, and you can literally like they have histories of people's entire like family lineages. Like I just looked on like if they had like records of my family, and they had like stuff going all the way back to the 1600s of my family. Like it's for free, it's like public access, but it's just weird that the Mormon Church is the one that is doing all of this categorization, like knowing their history with like race and genealogy and everything. They're the ones that are compiling these very detailed family trees of like literally everyone in the United States.
Yeah, they have a theological reason to do that, so like it does kind of make sense in like to a normal Mormon, like
it's very weird, very weird. Big Brother.
It is a bit creepy, but you know.
So they do like work. Yeah, I mean it's weird, but yeah, they do work for the dead. So like their motivation though makes sense. Like it's a.
Oh, I've got one in Australia as well. Holy crap! All right. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, I just put in my surname. View all 1,181,000.
Yeah, and they always present like the completed genealogy of every U.S. president. Like present.
Wow, that's weird. Wait, Mark, do you have American ancestors?
Sorry?
Do you have like American ancestry?
No.
Oh. I don't think I didn't know that if they were doing it internationally or not. I thought I was only aware of the Mormons doing it for like American families.
No, Australians just poofed into existence one day.
Yeah. We were actually created by NASA to trick people into thinking that the world is round. We're all paid actors. Look, there's too many Reids here. This is a fruitless search. Holy crap! Oh my.
That's why your videos flipped, right, Mark?
Huh?
That's why your videos flipped. You're actually upside down right now.
Yeah. That's actually
somebody in the comments is saying, and I was not aware of this, but apparently Mormons baptize the dead, like including like just everyone.
Yeah, that's bad.
Everyone in the past, every historical figure. Apparently, they're trying to baptize them all, like from the grave, I guess.
I think they got into trouble a couple of years back from baptizing all the Jews that were Holocaust.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
That's pretty gross. That is pretty gross. I'm still trying to find my family here. No. Yeah, no, they're not in there. Maybe my mother's family? I know that we, I had a great-grandfather that died in World War I think. No, they only seem to be people born overseas. This is weird because my family's been here since the very, like my ancestor was the first girl born in Victoria kind of thing. So, my family's been over here for a long time. Oh well, that's okay. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, no worries at all. And thanks for sharing that. And I think somebody's giving you a compliment about the Professor Dave versus Tour breakdown, Grayson. So yeah, I agree. That was really good. I was recommending that to people actually, and I do recommend it. It was very, very good.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, very much. Yeah, that's on my channel Base Theory. Check it out if you're listening.
Yeah. That was good because we did the sort of rundown over here. And yeah, actually, that's a good point. I got to add that. I'm so sorry, everyone. Does anyone want to shill while we're here? Spread your channel and what you're doing and what you're up to.
No,
Pat,
I'll see everybody. I'll see everybody at the end of summer. I'll be gone till then.
Oh, okay. Where are you this time?
I'm going back to England and Cornwall, so I'll be gone till
cool.
August.
All right, fantastic.
Really quick, I want to shill for Professor Dave just because we did the review of that debate, but Dave recently put out a whole video like fact checking like pretty much everything like Dr. Torres said in that debate, and I just gotta say like he really like knocked it out of the park with that video. Like he did a really good job of breaking that down. Like it's much better than my short little debunk video, but you know they're different. We bring up different points, but I just thought he did a really good job with his. It was like completely like thorough and extensive debunking.
All right. Yeah, I haven't seen it myself. I watched yours, but I haven't seen his kind of thing. I'm not a huge watcher. Like, this is the thing. I did that review, and then everybody was like, "Oh, you're just a Professor Dave fan." I don't really watch him at all. That's the thing. Like, I just, I don't know. There's just so much on YouTube to watch. I just, he's one that I've never gotten round to, I guess.
As someone that kind of like learning about like random subjects, I think like Professor Dave does a good job of like relaying the information that you would be learning in a course on some of these subjects into like short little like sub 10-minute videos. So he's like he makes them on like so many different topics that I just find myself kind of watching them like to totally like random subjects, and I don't know. That's the way I watch it typically, and I like his debunking videos are pretty good too.
Okay, I'll check it out. But yeah, I'm not a fan yet, but I might be in the future. So,
if I may shill, both Mark and Beamsy will be joining me this Monday or Tuesday if you live in Australia time to tear apart Kurt Wise on a documentary he was in. Should be fun.
Yep. So that should be interesting, and that's what's coming up. I'm probably going to be doing another debate review tomorrow, which is probably going to be Kem Ham versus Bill Nye, which is the famous one that sort of it really was one of the first debates I saw that got me really interested, and a really famous one. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Has anyone else got anything to share? Sorry,
I'll shill for Bill Nye. Bill Nye is like I love Bill Nye. He's
a great science communicator,
and he's got a new series. Like last year, I think he launched some series on maybe Peacock or one of the streaming channels, and it was pretty good. It's like it's
Bill Nye Saves the World or something, was it?
Yes,
or was that the previous one to that?
I'm pretty sure that's it. Bill Nye Saves the World or something.
Yeah,
maybe the end. Good. No, the end is nigh. The end is nigh.
Oh, okay.
It's about
right. So yeah, that was the one before. Yeah, I don't think I've seen The End is Night, but I've seen Bill Nye Saves the World.
Basically, it's about Armageddon science, but he kind of brings the humor. It's produced by Seth MacFarlane, so they kind of they have fun with it. It's got good graphics. Check it out if you like Bill Nye and you want to hit that nostalgia kind of itch for the old Bill Nye show.
Awesome. Yeah, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more random Mormon goodness, among other things that we do over here. Don't forget to be kind to yourself, and please be kind to each other. Even Kyle, who I was very upset with, but be kind to him too. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a great day or evening. One last thing. God, I'm never gonna get through this. I want to send you to somewhere. So Gur's actually streaming at the moment. So if you want somewhere to go, check out Gur's. I don't know what he's doing, but knowing Gur, it's probably something very dubious and slightly suspicious. So, but he is streaming at the moment apparently. So if you do need somewhere to go, give that a try. Much love, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.